Welcome, everybody. I want to just officially acknowledge that VocalEye is broadcasting to you this evening from the unceded, ancestral, and occupied territories of the Squamish, the Musqueam, and the Tsleil-Waututh peoples. We are all joining from different territories that we are settled on from across different nations as the magic of Zoom brings us all together in this space. And I honor and would love you to honor the lands that you're settled on as well. So I feel truly honored to live, to work, and to play on these lands. Welcome. Again, it's Wednesday, March the 10th, as we gather here again for our 36th virtual VocalEye event. This one tonight is called To See or Not to See by playwright Ruth Bieber, who I will mention, and I'm sure she'll bring it up, is a member of our very own community, which is why we have lots of people gathered here this evening to support this particular piece of artwork. So really, really excited about that. Next week, though, if you're wanting a little sneak preview on what's happening next week, for March the 17th, we're going to be playing an audio play. It's a bit of a comic look at a modern motherhood story, and it will it's a presentation in partnership with the Arts Club Theatre Company. So that's coming up next week. But let's focus on To See or Not to See. That's what we're here to talk about tonight. Ruth, why don't you join us in the space? I know you've been just out in the wings, but come on out, my friend. Let's have a little chin wag before we hit play tonight. We've got Ruth with us. Welcome, Ruth.
Hello, Amy.
Certainly excited to have you in the hot seat. How do you feel?
Well, I think we should just keep talking about cruises and travel because, boy, that was some really fun chatter going on there and some great excitement. And yeah, I just signed up with that Blind Women's virtual walking group this week. And
Canadian Blind Sports Initiative.
Yeah, how serendipity. What a fun bunch of women. It was a riot. I enjoyed that so much.
So you're not, as Christy mentions, you're not too tired from the hike today after a vigorous hike to be presenting this evening?
I took a nice long meditation and I'm raring to go.
Very cool. And I am so excited to have you because it's not often that we get a community member to share a piece of art in this space. And so really excited about that. Share with us a bit about what To See or Not to See, what we're going to witness here tonight, because this is a production you put together a couple of years back, right?
Oh, yes. So the actual ensemble was produced in Kelowna in 2016, which seems like a million years ago already now. But I wrote the play in 2008. So
wow.
we're going back. We're going back a little ways. And I was inspired to write the play because I had just left Inside Out Theatre, which was a theater company that I had founded, and I was artistic director of the company for 17 years. And I'd been doing 17 years worth of collective creation with, all different kinds of actors of all different kinds of abilities. And when I left the company and I became freelance, this was my first independent freelance project, was to write this play. And at the same time, I had just been finishing a 2-year Shaman's Altar program offered by Marv and Shannon Harwood. And so they say that when you write a play, you should write what you know. And I just thought it was kind of a really interesting thing to write about. I thought it would be a good place to start.
I had no idea that the storyline, and we'll get into some of that and we'll experience it any minute, that the experience around being with the shaman actually came from an experience that you had. So I'm actually looking forward to unpack that a little bit later in our Q&A, our official Q&A, when we bring Janet on board to talk a bit about that, because I don't want to spoil anything in advance for anybody. So we'll save those juicy bits for later. Can you set up for us, Ruth, whether the story of this blind character and their journey, is that in any way relevant or related to your story, or is it a little bit of both, part fiction, part fact? What world are we in here?
It's definitely memoir with a lot of creative license, I would say. And the two worlds blend together so um, seamlessly in my imagination. And through writing the play, I sometimes would forget what was actual and what was, my own creative input.
Uh-huh.
But I would say it's, let's say, 80%, my story, and then 20% creative license.
So let me just, pick your brain about something on a, I guess, a production side of things, which is, you wrote the play several years before it actually got produced and put on a stage. So, uh, any particular reason why the time gap between that? Just logistics, or, I don't know. Sometimes I have known some artists, some writers who are like, I'm not ready for this to be shared yet. So it's just for me right now. So what kind of thought process did you have around that?
That's such a great question, Amy, because once the play was finished and it had had its first reading in Calgary in December of 2008, at the Big Secret Theater, and that was really, I have to say, a highlight of my career. That was so exciting, and the actors that had done the reading, the parts, they were so wonderful. I mean, it was such a generous experience. Then I just sort of started pitching it, and I went to New York, and I lived in New York for the better part of 2 years, and I had a play reading there at Niku Spoon Theater in Lower Manhattan, and that reading had 3 sign language interpreters, because when you do a reading of a play, that's great for people who can't see, because you've got someone reading all the stage directions and whatnot, but it's not so easy for deaf people because there's no action, right? So there were 3 sign language interpreters, and that was my contribution to the deaf community in New York City. And then I had to move back to Canada for, that's another play. That's a different story altogether. Totally another play. We won't even go there. And I ended up in Kelowna, which was also a very creative, creatively fecund 6 years I had there. It was fantastic. And there was a reading again in 2013. And then after that, I'm still pitching this play all over the place. And I went to the island, Vancouver Island, and I met up with Frank Moore from Western Edge Theater. And I'm showing him the script. And every time I'm pitching it to somebody, I say, what would you change? How should it be different? Because there is that little bit of, as you were mentioning, that anxiety of, oh, I don't know if this is good enough or whatever. But I'm pitching it at the same time. And he says, you know what? You got to stop saying that. You have to just say, this is it. Because if you ask for feedback, you're going to get it.
And it'll never be finished.
Exactly. So that was the best piece of advice. And then he suggested that I contact Philip Wagner to direct the piece, and I produced and got a bit of a Canada Council for the Arts grant, which helped quite a little bit. And 14 actors later from the area, Kelowna and area, who were, again, the most generous actors ever. I have to say, I felt so loved from the experience of that show in Kelowna at the Mary Irwin Theater. So it's just been one of those long journeys of determination. And that's so interesting because we're talking about, a shamanic tradition here. And people who are interested in shamanism pay attention to nature. And this morning, for the first time, out my bedroom window, I heard a woodpecker. So of course I go and I check out what's the medicine of the woodpecker, and many things, but one of the bits about the woodpecker is communication and family. And I thought, this is my family, all these people who are coming here and supporting me today, and all the people who have supported me with this project throughout the years.
I love that, Ruth. Really excited to hit play any moment. We of course wait till 7 o'clock because I can hear people are still joining the meeting, and so we want everybody to be in their seats and raring to go. But you have obviously spread the word about what we're doing here tonight, and so I just want to acknowledge as well that in this space everybody is welcome, right? So we've got friends of yours from all over the place, friends of ours, friends of our community, all over Canada, from New York, and then we also have our sighted friends that are joining us. And this is not a sighted versus non-sighted space. This is a space for everybody, and it's really lovely to see everybody who's come to support what you're doing, Ruth, because I think that's also a way of building community, right? And you've really brought out the masses for this, so that's wonderful. If anybody is curious, we've got 61 people on the call right now, so that gives you an idea of where we're at. So before we get started, Ruth, this play, when you did it in Kelowna, was described by one of VocalEye's describers, Rick Waynes. And tonight it's going to be described by Eileen Barrett, because now it's a filmed version. It's not a live version. Yeah. Talk to us a bit about, and it might kind of be an obvious answer, but why you thought it was important to have it described.
Oh, because I really wanted it to be accessible to the blind community. That's always been really important to me, to make theater. And when I had the theater company for 17 years, it was about making theater accessible to everyone, on stage and off. And so hence, the shows were interpreted, as this one was, by the amazing Marie Clark. And then we had the lovely Rick Waynes, of course, doing the description. And, the disabled community, lots of blind people came and lots of deaf people came, and they were just so grateful to have that extra piece of information that you just don't have if one of your senses is missing.
One of the things that resonates with me is just that there's lots of content available. We know this, but the content is always the content itself is a stereotype. Like oftentimes it's boy meets girl, like that's the content, right? So we don't have diverse storytelling. And so as somebody who lives with a disability, I want to see stories that are reflective, that could resonate with my experience. And so I think that that's really one of the things that I look for in any artist that lives with a disability is the telling of our stories, and the telling them from our perspective, right? Not letting somebody else write them for us, about us, but telling them from our perspective. So I appreciate that very much in what you've done this evening. I have 7 o'clock on my phone to the dot. So that tells me, Ruth, that we're going to say goodbye to you in this moment, but you're going to join us again after the production with Janet, and we're going to do a Q&A and a full, I expect to get a full community engagement at that time. So prepare your questions as you watch To See or Not to See by Ruth Bieber. Rick, when you're ready, you can hit that play button.